Who are the most famous poets of all time? A brief look at the internet would suggest that Shakespeare, Yeats, Homer, Dante, and Frost would make the list. Edgar Allan Poe, Maya Angelou, William Blake, certainly. King David, who lived more than 3,000 years ago, is more widely read than all of those poets put together. But he seldom makes any famous poets list. Maybe if instead of psalms, he called his works poems, things would have turned out differently. King David is famous for his psalms. My brothers and I are not so famous, though we wrote at least 11 psalms, some of which you'll most likely recognize. One of our best lines? Psalm 42, verse 1. As the deer pants for water, so my soul pants for you, O God.
Solomon is reputed to have written much of the Book of Proverbs, as well as Ecclesiastes and Song of Songs. These poetical books give wise insight into the nature of God and the needs of mankind.
My brothers and I are the sons of Korah. A good student of the Bible would instantly be wary of that statement. One of our distant grandfathers was Korah, a priest who led a rebellion against Moses. In punishment, God had the whole earth swallow Korah and those associated with him. It seems obvious from the account that Korah's family would have died too, and there would have been no descendants. However, the Bible specifically states later that Korah's sons did not die. 7 generations later, the prophet Samuel arose from the line of Korah. Our clan were doorkeepers and custodians for the tabernacle. We were expert warriors under King David, and we became leaders of the choral and orchestral music in the tabernacle. We were also important in the ceremonial services when the tabernacle was brought to Jerusalem by King David. We are living proof that you can overcome the misdeeds of your ancestors. We were expert musicians, psalmists, and poets. It was only natural that we would continue to be in charge of all things having to do with music, psalms, and poetry under King David's successor, Solomon. Solomon was a pretty good poet. He actually makes a few of the internet's best poets list. One of his longer poems is in the Bible and is often titled The Song of Songs or The Song of Solomon. It is a love poem between a man and a woman who are not yet married. Solomon wrote many love poems, but this is the only one that survived through the centuries. My brothers and I joke he had to write a lot of love poems. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines. In a way, that poem reflects the life of Solomon as he aged. The poem has nothing to do with God or his covenant with Israel, nor is it concerned about wisdom. Instead, it celebrates a sexually charged relationship between two lovers. Frankly, the love poem's nothing special, but many people have found analogies in it. Some see it as an allegory between God and Israel. Others see it as an analogy between Christ and his bride, the church. Another of Solomon's poems is also found in the Bible. It's usually entitled Ecclesiastes, which means teacher or preacher. He wrote this long poem when he was old and a bit cranky. Solomon realized too late how poorly he had lived and felt like life was futile. Well, it is futile when you disobey God to the extent that he did. When Solomon wrote the poem, he could barely remember what it was to be wise, but he still recognized the value of wisdom. He could barely remember what it was to be faithful to God, but he still recognized God's power. There's a lot of wisdom in Ecclesiastes, but be careful in applying it to your own life. Remember, he wasn't the wisest man in the world when he wrote it. Be aware that there are musings. Use wisdom with musings such as everything is meaningless, or the conclusion that the wise and the foolish both meet the same end, death. Although there's no clear structure to the poem, it explores themes such as figuring out what is good for people to do while they live, what meaning, if any, is there in life, and what comes after life. Ecclesiastes does provide modern people with a paradox. It does try to explore some of the deeper thoughts in life. In opposition to that, modern life often consists of asking a voice-controlled computer intelligence to provide facts for shallow questions. Just jump to the end of the poem and read, "Here's my conclusion about everything. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of all. For God will judge every word and deed, including the things that appear to be hidden, to see if it is good or evil." A decent poet, yes. But that wasn't Solomon's best literary tool. Solomon was the best ever at Proverbs. Proverbs are these short words of wisdom-type sayings that are clearly applicable to everyday life. He wrote 3,000 Proverbs, although only a fraction of those are recorded in the Bible. People loved his Proverbs and wisdom. They came from all over the world to hear him speak them. The Book of Proverbs contains proverbs from Solomon and other wise people. One of the best things about the Book of Proverbs is you can find a proverb that fits nearly every situation. I mean, what parent or preacher doesn't have the need to quote, "Whoever loves instruction loves knowledge, but whoever hates to be corrected is stupid." You can't read even a few proverbs at random before you find something that applies to your own life, or something you want to text to one of your friends. Well, my friends anyways. Another thing about Proverbs that many people like is that Solomon didn't pull any punches. He didn't avoid any subjects in order to be politically correct or sensitive to people's feelings. After all, he was king. He could say or do whatever he wanted. And he was smarter than everybody else, so who was going to challenge him? He talked about the dangers of adultery, the value of wisdom, how to discipline children, the silliness of drunkenness, and the waste of ignorance and immorality. The book opens up with its purpose. It is to be read to gain wisdom and understanding, to learn how to behave prudently, and to do what is right, just, and fair. It is for the wise and for the foolish who wish to be wise. Its opening section concludes with this famous line: "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." Here are a few proverbs that might not go over so well in your society today, but they're still on point. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and don't count on your own understanding. You destroy yourself if you commit adultery. Laziness causes poverty. Also, whoever trusts in riches will fall. We sons of Korah were very sensitive to the fact of being wise and foolish. After all, our family is famous for our foolish ancestors. Through the generations, we have overcome that reputation. But we know we're only one or two decisions away from losing that reputation. Even if King Solomon chooses not to follow his own words, we will search them, we will weigh them, and we will do our best to act wisely. Solomon's Proverbs are not commandments from the Lord, but they are time-tested to be excellent guidelines for living a godly and productive life. If he had followed his own Proverbs, he and his people would have been much better off. How much better off are you? Let's see. I'll give you some famous lines and you'll tell me if they're in Psalms or Proverbs or not. Moderation in all things. Nope, Aristotle promoted that. A rose by any other name would still smell as sweet. Nope, Shakespeare wrote that. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Jesus said that, but it's not in Proverbs or Psalms. Spare the rod and spoil the child. No, but Solomon wrote some things pretty close to that. To thine own self be true. No, Shakespeare again. Hamlet. The Lord works in mysterious ways. A coffee mug. Comes from an old hymn, but it's not in the Bible. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the path of of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me. Yes. Yes, indeed. The internet's unrecognized poet, King David, wrote that.